Okay, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We're here to talk about the state of systems innovation 2025. It's great to see you, and thanks for joining. I am Joss Colchester, and my colleague Azra is actually not with me today, unfortunately, due to a last-minute issue, but we're going to be helping you understand all about the contents of our recently published paper on the state of systems innovation, and going to be walking through that for the next 45 minutes, 50 minutes, 60 minutes, however long. It depends on questions and all of this. But this is what we're going to be covering. I shared the board link with you. You're welcome to join me. And we're going to get started soon. Great to see you all. Ekin, Olga, Amaris, Mao, Alfonso. We're just collecting people. So we are live streaming to YouTube at the moment. So it's also recorded for people to view afterwards. And this is what we'll be covering, the contents, all of that. I'll be giving presentations. You'll be able to ask questions as you go along. Please, I do encourage you to make this an interactive session by following the link. Okay, we've got Ekin joining from Turkey. Good afternoon, Ekin. Good to see you. Yeah, who else we got joining? Alfonso from Mexico. Actually, we have a little exercise on the board here, a little icebreaker. So if you're able to make it to the board, please grab one of these dots, whichever is your favorite color, and drag it to your location in the planet, on the planet. I'm in London currently in the UK. Love to see where you people are joining from. If you can't join the board, just drop it into the chat there. As mentioned, we have someone from Mexico and Turkey. Okay, great. So here's the board link again, and hopefully you can find me. I'll bring everyone to me. Alrighty. So we'll take a quick minute to do this. And yeah, just to remind you, we're live streaming to YouTube. So it's recorded for those who can't make it. Okay, Amaris, you're improvising there. We just want one of the dots down here. Okay, hi Stan, good afternoon. Greg, good to see you. Alrighty. So let's jump in here and the link one more time. So just myself today, Azure wasn't able to make it. We will be covering all of this and going to get started now. Definitely welcome all your questions as we go along. And there's going to be space for us to pause and discuss those with you. Let's take a quick look. Where are you joining from? Okay, Europe, US, Brazil, Turkey, Australia. Wow, must be quite late in Australia, actually. Yeah, very late in Australia, I'd say. But good to have you all joining. And let's jump in. So this is the state of systems innovation in 2025. So this is the second time we've produced this paper, this report. We did one in 2023. And yeah, it's an overview, a preliminary review of what the field of systems innovation looks like at this time. And we do this because at SI, Systems Innovation Network, our purpose is to build the field of systems innovation. And we think we're in quite a good situation to be helping others understand and gain visibility into what it looks like, where we are, many other questions as to who's involved and what organizations are interested and so forth. So we'll be looking at all of that. We're now a community of 29,000 members and a following of hundreds of thousands or 100,000 followers or more. So I'll talk a bit about where the data comes from, but it's partly why we do that, because we have lots of data being a platform that we do this and we build upon that. But really, we want to help the world. So we want to build the field systems innovation, help other people understand what this looks like, how it's evolving, and so forth. And this is the second iteration of it, definitely building upon the first one, building upon all the data we have, and new insights this time. So that's where it's coming from. If you're on the board, there's a little question section at the end of each section here, and you'll be able to, if you have a question, drop a sticky in there and type away. And for anyone who's just joining, there's the Miraboard link. Welcome you to do that. So, assessments are a bit tricky, to be honest, particularly in an emerging field like systems innovation with all its complexities. So hopefully we hold this relatively lightly. It's not a authoritative guide. It's not a final statement or anything like that, but hopefully it can help inform us about what's going on and where we're going and so forth. And we're also, as mentioned, about building capacity for systems innovation. So we think some assessment of that is useful. Are we going in the right direction? What are we growing? Who's involved in this? All of those questions, having some insight into that, us and the members, you people and others, is very useful. So that's why we're doing this. But we do hold it, we call it the unofficial guide because there is no official guide. It's an emerging field. What are we actually evaluating here? What are we assessing when we say the field of systems innovation? That's our first well, there's a few preliminary considerations. One is why are we doing it, which I kind of covered there. Two is what are we actually assessing? And three are how are we assessing it? Where are we getting data from and all of this? So that's what we're covering here. This section is what we're assessing. And we break that out into these 4 dimensions. It's kind of from the micro to the macro, because we want to think about the bigger picture. How's this developing globally across different sectors, across different organizations, but also who are the individuals, what are they interested in, and why are they part of this, and so forth, what professions. So we're looking at that everywhere from the sectors, which are the different thematic areas we have on our hub. So things like energy and governance and food and finance, that's what we mean by sectors, to geographies, mainly focusing on cities and countries. Organizations, what organization types are interested in all of this? What do they look like? Individuals, who are they? What professions are they coming from? What are they interested in? So that's what we're looking at. And that's how the coming sections are going to be broken out. You see the next 5 sections, the next one down will be a little intro into what we mean by systems innovation. The next 4 will be going into those different dimensions that I talked about. And then finally, where do we get this data from? So we draw primarily from the data of the members on our website. As mentioned, about 29,000 of those. We have quite a large following on LinkedIn, towards 50, 60,000. So we leverage some of that data in terms of the profiles of the followers and who they are. We ask people questions on LinkedIn on our website and have been doing that for a number of years. And they reply to those, and we use that. And we also inform this with our qualitative insights into the conversations we have and the events we host and all of this, the people we meet and what we learn from them more qualitatively. So it's also informed by that. And a lot of it is a good combination between the kind of quantitative data and the more qualitative kind of insights. Okay, hopefully that gives you an idea why we're doing this, what we're doing in terms of what we're evaluating, and kind of where's the data coming from. Any questions on all of that? Any questions so far? Feel free to unmute yourself and shout it out. Otherwise, we can stay going. Everybody happy? Great. Okay. So just for the newcomers, I share the mirror board again. You'll find the link to the guide here in case I'm assuming many people have seen it. If you haven't, I'll just quickly share that link with you. Let me see. So this is it here on the website, and I'll give you this. Yeah, you just download it there, the PDF, and off you go. It's essentially everything I will be showing you today. So that's that. You'll find it there on the board. Okay, so the first section here, I'm going to go through this one relatively quickly because it's really more for people who don't know what this field is about, what systems innovation is about. So I assume some of you people do, because I know some familiar faces here. You've been part of the community. I think you know a bit already. So this is more for people who are not familiar with it. Yeah, because it's an emerging field, we need to kind of define a little bit of what we're talking about here. So we define what we mean by systems innovation, the broader context that exists within as a foundations for us to do our evaluation. What do we mean by systems innovation? It's a new systems-based approach to enabling change within complex systems at all levels. It's a holistic approach that looks at the overall dynamics and systemic conditions of an issue, and is trying to move away from the more reductionist approach to innovation and change to think more expansively about the full set of factors and actors and interrelationships that are affecting a complex issue, and how we can find approaches that work with that complexity rather than against it. So it's a little bit about systems innovation, moving away from innovation as usual, products and services, to new methodologies that are going to help us innovate in complex systems and address these wicked challenges in an appropriate fashion. Wicked challenges might look like that. Environmental kind of issues, might be social, might be economics, inequality, and so forth. But that's what we're talking about, these wicked challenges. And how can we develop better methodologies for addressing those? And they're systemic, so our approaches need to be systemic. This is all of the stuff we talk about at SI. Hopefully you join for some of the sessions and read guides and learn all about that. Not going to cover too much today, but this is what we're assessing for: our ability to actually work with complex systems, to understand them, and to try to influence and guide changes within complex systems, and move away from the linear approaches that aren't working so well for us. So, and ultimately get this more ecosystem collaborative way of working. So it's changes in thinking, but also new ways of working, getting away from the silos, from dividing problems up and separating them out from the kind of bureaucratic approaches of planning and so forth, to this more networked, collaborative, innovative, agile, and adaptive approaches to addressing these challenges that are more fit for the challenge at hand. So that's what we're looking at. Hopefully that all makes sense to you. Any questions so far? Hopefully you know all of this. Great. So that's that. So let's jump in then to the evaluation. We start here with subjects. What subjects are people interested in? And there's lots of ways of saying what's part of the field of systems innovation and what's not. This is one way we kind of categorize it. It brings in a lot of methods and tools from many different areas, obviously from the whole area of systems thinking and complexity science, but systems mapping and leverage points and stakeholder mapping and transition design and all those models there, and ecosystem building and all of this. So that's a little bit what we mean by methods and subjects. And in this section, we're trying to understand which areas are people actually aware of or familiar with or interested in. And pretty quickly, you see that systems innovation is not the big one, really, unfortunately. So it looks more like that. This is Google Ngram, which is looking at the number of times that word appears in a book. That's taken in 2025, but it's going back to 1990, I should say. And you can see systems thinking is the big word that people are familiar with. Systems change a bit and systems innovation just a little bit. So this is what we mean by an emerging field. System thinking is a bit more established in some parts of the world, at least. And systems thinking still growing, and we have systems change there. So This graphic represents the frequency of terms in the headline text of the profile of the 55 plus K thousand followers of the SI LinkedIn channel in 2025. So we can see systems thinking is of interest, systems change, complex systems, and then systems innovation, mapping, ecosystem building, system dynamics, so on and so forth. So I think that's quite useful already, just to inform us about systems thinking is kind of the elephant in the room that many people are aware of, and then not so much some of these other areas like systems innovation. I think that's useful. Maybe you knew that already, but it's quite useful information. Okay, let's stay going. This one here is n-gram again, just looking at the frequency of that term in the books over this period of time. So we can see the term is rising, right, over the past 40 years. Systems innovation, it's probably only about 40 years old or 30 years old, really, this idea. So it's still getting started here. And that is that. So here's some questions we were asking people on the website. We asked them which area you're interested in. And again, systems thinking, actually it follows the data before a little bit, right? Systems thinking, systems change, systems innovation. So kind of the same story there. How does systems thinking differ from systems innovation? And the answer primarily is that it's a more specific approach to systems change that focuses on innovation entrepreneurship. So those are those. And what's your level of understanding? This is a LinkedIn poll. So most people understand some of the ideas. Some people working on applying it. I have a good idea. And fewer people just becoming aware. This one was an interesting one. Or no, sorry. What's your level of understanding? What's your level of awareness? So where would you say the level of awareness around systems innovation is generally? We did this on the website and on LinkedIn, and most people were saying it was a bit split between no one knows about it and starting to gain traction. But yeah, a little bit more on starting to gain traction and definitely not mainstream or really becoming popular at all. So that's what we mean by just getting started here. I thought that was quite an interesting one. But again, yeah, you need to hold this data quite lightly. This is just people's response. Yeah, any questions on that, around the subjects so far? Feel free to unmute yourself if you have any comments or questions on this one around what areas people are interested in. Okey-dokey. So there's the link if you want to join the board, and we can stay going. So the next section is around individuals. So people often ask, who are the members on your platform? Who are the people who are interested in this subject? And this is one of the most interesting graphics coming out of it. It's not totally straightforward getting that information, but how we did this was text analysis of our LinkedIn followers' profiles and seeing how often these words occurred in their profile. So as we can see, designer popped out as big ones. So it means we have a lot of designers interested in this. And that makes a certain amount of sense, I think. A lot of people, well, there are a lot of designers out there in the world, or people interested in that. And they're interested in systems thinking, but also attracted to systems innovation because it kind of aligns with their whole approach to some extent. So then we've got management is probably the next big one. all about organizations and how to manage them. And then the top left, we can see again related to organizations, consultants, coaches, leadership. So that's kind of a cluster. And then we've got researchers and professors as another group, and people working in innovation, entrepreneurship, innovation management, innovation ecosystems, kind of the main ones, those five. Hopefully that gives you a little insight into who the members of the SI network and the followers are and the people who are interested in this. We also have engineers and people working in sustainability there to a lesser extent. Okay, so yeah, we then did a little bit of kind of digging into that, but it's more qualitative about why these people, what do we know about these people and their relationship to systems thinking or systems innovation? And yeah, this is based more on conversations that we have. So designers, we started there. And why are they interested in this? They're starting to see the limitations of user-centered design and design thinking. They're trying to find approaches that help them more effectively work with more complex scenarios and systems. And they're also interested more in the broader consequences of their designs and the effects of those that user-centered design doesn't really help you with. They're also bumping up against a lot of complexity in terms of information technology and many interconnected systems and complex service systems and so forth. So this is taught in, I mean, around here in London, systems thinking, you'll find it in quite a few of the top universities for design. It's taught and we have lots of students coming to our meetups because they hear about it in their master's degrees or undergraduates. And there's quite a bit of interest, as we saw there, like the largest user group, right? So that's the designers. Ekin, do you want to chime in there?
Thank you. I just noticed that CEOs are still very it's a very small bubble, so to say. And I found it interesting because they're the ones as the decision makers. Yeah, like to me, I feel like as a designer, whether I use systems thinking or not, if the higher management is not understanding what I'm doing, then yeah, I think there's a problem there.
Yeah, but then how many designers versus CEOs are there in your company?
Oh, for me right now, I'm working as a freelancer, so I can't comment, but maybe someone has a better experience.
Yeah, I'm just getting to the point that there's a lot more designers. There's quite a few CEOs in the world, right? I understand what you're saying. We do need to speak to senior management, as you say, and leadership and so forth. But there's quite a few of those in the world relative to the number of researchers or designers. But yeah, okay. Thanks for that. Anybody else want to add on this graphic? Again, need to hold it quite lightly. I think it helps inform us a bit. But yeah, be conscious of kind of what might be behind it also, as I was kind of illustrating there. Okay, so to stay going, management. It's actually long been a home for systems thinking in some ways. I mean, systems thinking has been around for almost a decade, and there was a big push 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s with Peter Senge and the fifth discipline and all of this to really introduce systems thinking into management and top management and all of this. And I think progress was made. That book, The Fifth Discipline, it was one of the most popular books almost of the management in the 21st century, to be honest. So it made a lot of headway and there's a lot of interest and there still is a lot of interest. But it hasn't really it's not, I wouldn't say that's growing anymore. That reached a peak, I would say, in the 1990s or early 2000s. and reductionism live strong in organizations. So there's a lot of interest, but there's a lot of kind of work that needs doing there. In consultancies, in organizations, coaches, we have a lot of organization development people, coaches, as we saw before, both in public and private sector. And there's obviously a recognition of the need for this in terms of the complexity of the world and volatility and uncertainty and all of that. Whether this is really kind of scaled and really gained traction, at the higher levels and across management is definitely debatable, even though there's interest. The World Economic Forum, you'll see it as one of their top skills, often complex problem solving and systems thinking. Is it taught in school? Not necessarily, right? So that's management. They're one of the big user groups there. Innovation, as you might suspect, because of the name. People who want to move beyond innovation as usual, products and services. They're interested in more holistic ecosystem approaches to innovation and addressing more purposeful forms of innovation. Is often attracted to this way. A lot of innovation is not very purposeful, and systems innovation is. So it attracts people for that reason. So it leads often. There's a close link between innovation ecosystems and all of that, and innovation management of innovation ecosystems and this area. So there's a lot of overlap, and people come through that pathway. And that's that. I'm going to stay going. Researchers. A lot of researchers in the world, and systems and complexity theory has relevance and application in every area of research. So I think people have been discovering that for some time, but it's still a small section of academia that's really adopting this. The mainstream of academia is still very much reductionist, still very compartmentalized and so forth. But there's interesting work in different, particularly applied areas, think about the energy transition or healthcare or mobility or climate change or things like this. So it's an exciting new area that offers us a more realistic kind of view of the world. But it's still, I'd say, a small kind of fraction of the cosmos of the world of academia, unfortunately. So that's that. Any questions before we move on? Are you happy? Okie dokie. So the next one is looking at that was all about the different types of organized individuals. So this was subjects up here. What areas are people interested in? What individuals, professions come into this field or are interested in it? And then here we have organization types. What types of organizations are interested in this? Just share the link for the newcomers, and we'll stay going. Hi, good to see you, James. Good morning, good afternoon. Yeah, great. So we're just looking at organizations now. Here we try to assess which types of organizations people are interested in, systems innovation, what organizations are they part of. And we used a few sources here, but let's take a look at that. We asked them to self-select what type of organization they're working to introduce systems thinking into. This one was a slightly older poll, so it's actually a couple of years old now, but most people into private sector, it looks like, my company, or my government at different levels, others into schools and academia, non-for-profits, and others. So those are the individuals selecting which organizations they're trying to introduce systems thinking into. This is some of the organizations in this space that can be useful, just to understand who kind of works here. And to the right is more applied, to the left is more academic. And we have some of the larger ones like Climate Kick, Europeans innovation ecosystem for addressing climate change. And they adopt a systems innovation approach, and probably a few hundred people and working at quite a larger scale with a network of partners across Europe. UNDP Accelerator Labs, a network of labs that are using systems approaches to explore new approaches to development around the planet. There's about 100, 150 of them. And that's them. They take a iterative adaptive approach to kind of trying to take a more bottom-up approach to development, seeing what's going on locally and mapping solutions and building upon those. Viable Cities is a network in Sweden trying to create climate neutral cities by 2030. Ashokra, you may have heard of. It's a community, a network for social innovation, except a design sustainability company in the Netherlands, Metabolic, a bit similar, Cora Foundation, Rios Partners, who facilitate and lead systems change initiatives around the world. Dark Matter Labs, you may have heard of, designing institutional infrastructure for more equitable, caring, and sustainable futures, and many others. Won't go into them. Hopefully you're familiar with some of those. And you're welcome to look them up. You'll find them all on the internet. So it's just a small selection, and there are others that we would consider in this field of systems innovation. So this is organizational types. It's data taken from LinkedIn about what types of organizations the members following the Systems Innovation LinkedIn channel are part of. So higher education is the big one, business consulting, IT consulting and services, government administration, non-for-profits, research centers are the main ones then. And then here, again, kind of go into a little overview of those different types of organizations and why they're interested in this or why they're not interested in this, starting with the public sector. So they have huge potential as platforms for systems innovation with their kind of legitimacy and the challenges they're facing. But a lot of public service delivery is definitely rooted in industrial age logic. There are calls and definitely initiatives, particularly here in the UK, but other parts of the world, around doing public services differently, more relational approaches to public services, but more complexity and systems informed generally. You see those in Australia and the UK. There's a lot of stuff happening in organizations like the United Nations, UNDP, I just mentioned. And in other organizations, in Sweden, there's interesting stuff, their missions and so forth. So there's definitely bits and pieces, but that's public sector. Private sector maybe hasn't been as quick to adopt these approaches, maybe in management, as I talked about, but otherwise, this seems to be a kind of missing space for enterprises and public sector about how they contribute to systems innovation. I mean, systems thinking makes it into these organizations to have, they're interested in their teams and their management thinking more comprehensively, thinking in systems, thinking more holistically about challenges and the benefits of that. But when it comes to actually, systems innovation, it's often not really resonating with the private sector, I'd say. So it's a mixed kind of receptiveness there to some things and not to others. And to some extent, that makes sense. The public sector, has a mandate for broader systems in society. So you'd expect them to be interested. Private sector doesn't. It's about its own business, although that's changing. That barrier of kind of private for profit often kind of limits their interest, I would say, in terms of these broader systems and changes within them. So that's that. Social sector and academia. The other one, social sector, historically, systems change has been quite a big thing in the non-for-profit charity philanthropy foundation worlds, particularly here in the English-speaking world, in the UK and some of the US and so forth. And this term systems change almost became mainstream in certain areas there. Um, Whether the real understanding of it is behind that to substantiate it, you might question that. But definitely, this has been a bit of a home for systems change approaches. Um, and that's the social sector. Academia, again, we kind of touched upon that before. It's made progress, I mean, in these more technical fields, the Santa Fe Institute, MIT, Stellenbosch University in South Africa is one example too. So definitely places where it's made progress. But again, we kind of covered that earlier on in terms of the challenges of breaking out of traditional kind of academic structures and so forth. Alrighty, so that was covering a little bit the organizations. Hopefully that gives you some insight into which organizations this kind of resonates with or is developing in or receptive to this. Any questions or comments on that one? Does it make sense? Okie dokie. So I'm just clicking through it and do jump into the guide if you want to go more in depth on all of this. Yep, let me stay going. So this is very interesting data also about locations. And it's primarily drawing upon where people like you, the members of the SI website, are located. And that's giving us insight into where the people who are interested in systems innovation are and who are doing this, because you're self-selecting to be part of a platform called Systems Innovation. So we're assuming to some extent these are the people who are interested. So that's what it looks like globally. This heat map is quite an interesting one. And some things pop out quite quickly about Europe being a locus for this, and the northeast of the United States. Obviously, there's many things going on behind this around language, around internet connectivity and economic development and all sorts of things. But just what we see is those are kind of centers. We can also, yeah, we show it here, like some of the main areas. Australia, actually, Melbourne and Sydney are some of the main locations in terms of followers. India too, there's quite a large user base in parts of Southeast Asia, but then Europe and particularly Northern Europe, UK, Netherlands, Belgium, parts of Germany, Scandinavia. But then the east coast of North America, from Toronto to New York and Washington. These are big areas. And looks a bit like that. Also Sao Paulo, kind of Brazil, south of Brazil. It's also a little bit to do with where we have hubs. I think that's affecting the data a little bit. Some locations like Mexico, we have hubs, others we don't, and it affects it slightly. So that's a heat map for the location of the SI members globally. Obviously, the red spots are where there's high density, and yellow and then green, not so much. Okay, so we then try to identify some patterns there. And we can say it's, in some sense, it's kind of tracking certain underlining economic dynamics, I would say. We see a kind of close connection between systems innovation and innovation economies. And that's what this is talking to here, particularly purposeful innovation economies. And this graph is kind of laying out certain development there from kind of traditional industrial age economies to innovation economies, more purposeful innovation economies, like you might find in Northern Europe or parts, to systems innovation economies. If you look at like a map of innovation economies, you would see places like Switzerland or Germany or Sweden and so forth, the US or wherever, Singapore. And you can see this tracks this a little bit if you add that purposeful kind of aspect to it. So that's an interesting kind of intersection of how the underlying kind of economic and also social dynamics, right? These ideas are more receptive to some societies, some cultures than others. We've seen that as we've developed hubs in different locations. This makes a lot more sense than others. So the geographical data is very, very interesting from that respect. And the rest of this section is just going into, zooming in on different locations. If we're talking about cities, this is the LinkedIn followers, London and the Netherlands. Randstad is the broader urban region in the Netherlands. And then, Sydney in Australia, big locations, Bangalore, Toronto, Berlin, Sao Paulo. These are some of the main places where the followers of the SI LinkedIn page are coming from. And then just going back to the heat map and the members on the website, this zooms in on Europe and some of the hotspots there. As noted, the kind of Netherlands, Belgium region, London, the whole of south of the UK, and then the west of Germany, Switzerland, some of the core areas. Latin America, we have 2 hubs there in Argentina and Mexico, but then also Colombia and south of Brazil are important locus for the members. North America, Toronto is probably the most important location in North America for all things to do with systems approaches. But then the West Coast there, New York City and that area. And the East Coast, California, are the kind of main areas. And Southeast Asia, we have a lot in India followers, but also Singapore, Philippines, actually, and Indonesia are the main areas. And we don't really know about China because they generally use a VPN, so you don't really see where the traffic's coming from there. Okay, so that's locations, and we're drawing to a close there. Any questions about the locations? One can draw many kind of insights and questions around why some locations are more receptive than others. As mentioned, it's definitely to do with economic factors and cultural factors, and a few things kind of intersect there. And language too. Yeah. Any questions, or should I stay going? Okie dokie, feel free to drop them in chat or on the board. So just to look at this final section, which is about the thematic areas, the sectors that people are interested in. And this also relates to the challenge areas that people are interested in. So here we try to understand which domains and challenge areas people are most interested in or are working on. So using data from LinkedIn, and doing text analysis and building wild clouds out of that based upon the frequency of the occurrence of words in people's profiles. So this is it put together where the main terms came out from their profile. Sustainability, health, economy, marketing, climate, education, policy, law, culture, finance are some of the main ones that people had in their profile, and this we assume associates with them. Risk, security, energy, community, communications. That's the main cluster, and then we kind of break it out into different subsections based upon social, environmental, economics, and so forth. So health was a big one here, health and education policy. Again, drawing on the same data from LinkedIn profiles, economics, marketing, finance, risk. Infrastructure, energy, urban, cities and mobility. And environmental was terms around sustainability, climate, food, land and water. And those are the main thematic areas. And one might say also the challenge areas that people were interested in based upon their LinkedIn profiles. So there may be better ways of doing this. It'd be good to maybe cross-correlate it with other data, but that's where we are with it at the moment. And that's that, people. Hopefully it's helpful. It's a preliminary review of the state of systems innovation in 2025. If you had any feedback about, better ways of doing this or new things we could integrate to improve how we do this, that'd be much welcome on the board or in the chat, or you could send me a message afterwards. Would love to hear those or any questions or comments you might have before we wrap up today. Okay, I'll see you soon, Amaris. Did that answer all your questions today, Stan? How did you find them?
Yeah, it was good. It was great. It's nice to see that. I'm not surprised about the difference between systems thinking and systems innovation, though. That's not that surprising.
Yeah, I mean, one's been around, much longer, and it's much
Hmm.
broader and has relevance in more areas. Yeah.
And there is a way in which that talking about that, the more people talk about systems thinking, the more people are going to like, oh, systems thinking, I've heard of that, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, a feedback loop. Yeah.
Uh,
James, did you want to add?
Yeah, just kind of along the same lines, working a lot with a company that it's a fairly large company, 20,000 plus employees, and they really embrace systems thinking as a kind of foundational skill set for as many of their employees and certainly management as possible. And their rationale being it builds in a kind of sense of anti-fragility and corporate longevity. So kind of sustainability in all its manifestations, right? So if you understand the landscape more richly, more deeply, you can anticipate theoretically um, some of the big shifts that are taking place. Now, the question of systems innovation, where you're actually, I guess, more of an active agent in seeking a renovation of broader systems outside of the company. I would say there's interest there, but it's still very, very early days. And I think there's curiosity around things like, okay, well, what might happen if we see major shifts in how mobility and transportation work, for example, or in how people choose to live together and in what environments. And I think there's a curiosity about what those shifts are, not quite a kind of like active agent approach in let's usher those systems changes in. But I do think there is a kind of gateway effect of like if you become curious about systems and that builds that culture within the company, I think ultimately there's these layers that unfold for people and for organizations. So I think it's early days, but I think it's potentially hopeful that there's more private sector involvement in this or in this realm.
Yeah, it's a great observation. I would concur. And I think what you're alluding to is systems thinking, as important, as valuable as it can be, it can also end up a bit easily put back into the boxes, can't it? And remain something conservative and not actually push towards change and transformation. Whereas systems innovation does really lead you in that direction. And that's why it's maybe easier to stay in the systems thinking world where we talk about, a more holistic way of viewing the world, and companies can definitely see the value, as I think you're getting to, for a few reasons. but it can end up either an academic exercise or just a kind of upskilling of our employees, right? And never really leads to something substantively changing in the world. And I guess that's why we did center our community in the space of systems innovation, to really encourage us to, push into that space of what the world needs in terms of transformation and thinking about how we can influence and guide these broader systems, which is difficult for a lot of organizations to digest and really embrace, as you say. So it's a great point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, Ekin, thanks. It would be nice to also see the social platform chatter stats. Do people talk about it on TikTok? I'm not. I haven't been to TikTok in since I was born, so I'm not sure about that. Stan, I mean, I think you're getting to the same point, isn't it, Stan? And it's kind of the point of, the difference between talking and doing, isn't it? Like it's easy to talk with systems thinking. Systems innovation pushes us towards doing, and there's a lot of tension there. There's a big gap. So yeah, it's great that we raised that point, because I think it's an important one. But also, as you say, James, it can be a segue. It can be a kind of gateway drug. So not kind of, exclude the possibilities, the options also. Okay. Any other questions, or should we draw to a close? Comments? It was great to have you all joining today and to share this with you. Share it with all our YouTube followers through live stream, and the recording will be there. We'll share it back on the website afterwards. The paper, as mentioned, you're welcome to look into that. It's on the website, freely available to download. Your feedback's always appreciated. I dropped a link in the chat, so you can jump in here and just drag a dot to how you found this session today, and would appreciate that. Also, stickies there if you want to leave any notes about ideas for improving this, or any feedback that would help us next time. That'd be appreciated. Great. We'll wrap up there for now, and I look forward to seeing you again in future sessions. People, have a good day, have a good week, take care.